Good morning. When COVID-19 hit, Justin Trudeau and the Liberal government were not ready. Caught unprepared, they made bad decisions that hurt our health response. As the first wave of COVID moved to the second and third waves, the Trudeau Liberals did not learn, improve, or adapt, and were increasingly being propped up by the NDP bloc and Greens. It didn't have to be this way. Le Canada a déjà été confronté à d'autres pandémies, le SRAS et le H1N1. Chaque fois, nous en avons tiré de précieuses leçons. Nous nous sommes préparés à de futures pandémies. Malheureusement, le gouvernement Trudeau a annulé une grande partie de la préparation effectuée par les gouvernements précédents. Tout en accumulant d'énormes déficits, les libéraux ont décidé que la préparation à une pandémie n'était pas une priorité. Ils ont alors réduit le financement des programmes clés. They shut down the Global Public Health Intelligence Network, let the National Microbiology Laboratory waste away, depleted Canada's PPE stockpile, let vital equipment expire, attacked the pharmaceutical industry, and stacked the Public Health Agency with bureaucrats, not scientists. They denied that there was a risk to Canada. Unlike our allies, like Australia and New Zealand, they waited too long to close the border. Les libéraux ont ignoré les avertissements des scientifiques canadiens sur la menace de la COVID-19. Ils n'ont pas reconnu assez rapidement l'importance du dépistage aux frontières, du port du masque, de la recherche fondée sur les preuves et de la production nationale des vaccins. Les travailleurs de la santé en première ligne ont été laissés à eux-mêmes. Pendant ce temps, les directives de la santé publique étaient contrôlées ou bloquées. Le virus s'est propagé à travers le pays. Cela a provoqué de la peur et de l'anxiété chez les Canadiens. Cela a aussi entraîné des cycles répétés de confinement ainsi que la mort tragique des milliers de Canadiens. We know that we will face more COVID-19 variants in the years to come. We also know that pandemics are becoming more common. We need to be ready. Canada's Conservatives will ensure that Canada is ready to face future pandemics. Our goal is simple. Ensure Canada is prepared and take rapid action so that we protect the health of Canadians while avoiding long-term impacts on the economy and on the mental health of Canadians. Nous allons demander une enquête publique pour examiner chaque aspect de la réponse du gouvernement fédéral à la pandémie. L'enquête va veiller à ce que les leçons tirées de la pandémie soient rendues publiques et que les apprentissages soient mis à profit immédiatement. Canada's Conservatives will implement a Canada Emergency Preparedness Plan. The plan will be measured and updated regularly and ensure we are never unprepared for a pandemic again. Our plan will include partnering with the pharmaceutical companies to ramp up domestic manufacturing of critical medicines and active ingredients, to work alongside the United States to strengthen the North American supply chain of pharmaceuticals to reduce our shared reliance on imports. We will overhaul Canada's pandemic plan and the National Emergency Stockpile System to be ready with the resources we need to respond to infectious diseases and to bioterrorism threats, instead of solely on influenza. We will also ensure our national plan includes domestic vaccine research, trials development, and manufacturing capacity, so the delays and mistakes of COVID-19 never happen in Canada again. Nous allons rétablir le réseau mondial d'information en santé publique qui a été fermé par le gouvernement libéral. Les systèmes canadiens de collecte de renseignements sur la santé publique doivent être à l'avant-garde. Les Canadiens méritent un gouvernement qui protège sa population et qui passe à l'action. Nous devons agir pour le Québec et pour le Canada afin d'être plus prêts à l'avenir. Canada's Conservatives will ensure that Canada is ready to face future pandemics and other health threats, including bioterrorism. Canadians deserve a secure country. We cannot afford more of the same from Mr. Trudeau and his partners in the NDP bloc and Green Party. Thank you. I'm prepared to take your questions.
And now we'll be taking questions, starting with question on the phone and alternate between the room and the phone. Quick reminder, as usual, one question and one follow-up. Nous allons maintenant prendre les questions, commençant par les questions au téléphone et alternant les questions de la salle et au téléphone. Petit rappel, une question avec une question de suivi. Today, Mr. O'Toole will take 8 questions. Aujourd'hui, M. O'Toole prendra 8 questions. Operator, do we have the first question?
Catherine Lévesque, La Presse canadienne.
Oui, bonjour, M. O'Toole. Votre député Michel Rempel-Garner dit qu'on devrait écouter lorsque les peuples autochtones nous disent d'annuler la fête du Canada. Je me demandais si vous étiez d'accord avec elle.
Selon moi, c'est possible de célébrer notre pays, d'être fier dans notre pays, tout en respectant notre engagement pour la réconciliation. C'est important pour notre parti, pour moi personnellement comme chef. Et on doit redédier nos efforts sur la réconciliation, particulièrement avant la fête du Canada.
Follow-up.
Parfait. Et puis, en fait, je me demandais, donc, vous avez dit à votre caucus la semaine dernière que si vous deveniez premier ministre, vous alliez faire la plus grosse fête du Canada qu'on n'aura jamais vue en 2022. Ça, c'est l'année prochaine, mais pour cette année, considérant le contexte dans lequel on est, considérant tous ces sépultures anonymes là, qu'on retrouve, ces souvenirs douloureux, disons, pour les peuples autochtones, ne pensez-vous pas qu'on devrait plutôt en faire une journée de réflexion cette semaine, cette année, en ce 1er juillet?
Il y a 3 semaines après la triste situation à Kamloops, j'ai proposé au Premier ministre d'avancer un plan d'action sur les appels d'action 71 à 76 dans le rapport de la vérité et réconciliation sur les enfants disparus. On doit avoir un plan d'action avant la fête du Canada. J'ai dit ça il y a 3 semaines. Malheureusement, comme d'habitude, le Premier ministre, il n'a pas un plan d'action sur les appels d'action. Et c'est possible d'avoir un engagement fort sur la réconciliation tout en célébrant notre pays. Je suis un fier Canadien et c'est possible d'être fier, mais en même temps d'avoir un engagement, un plan pour la réconciliation. Ça serait mon approche comme Premier ministre. Comme chef de l'opposition, ma première question était sur la réconciliation dans la Chambre des communes. Donc, je vais agir pour la réconciliation.
We will take the next question from the floor. Nous allons prendre la prochaine question de la salle.
Glenn McGregor, CTV News. Good morning, Mr. O'Toole. Your party has repeatedly assailed the Liberals over their vaccine plan. Your health critic said it would be 2030 before we got everybody vaccinated. Now we're substantially ahead of schedule. It looks like by the end of next month, there'll be enough vaccine to do everyone. What makes you think that this is a winning issue for you? Your criticism of the government's performance on COVID when we have a markedly better fatality rate per capita than other countries, other G7 countries. Well, why do you think this is that people are going to buy your line that you would have done it better?
Well, Glenn, the first commitment of someone running to lead this country is to make sure you protect the health, well-being, and the economy of this country. And that's why this plan I'm announcing today to secure our country, the 4th pillar of our Canada Recovery Plan, is so important. Anyone that followed the process of this pandemic knows that it caught the world by surprise, but Mr. Trudeau and his team were late on the border, both at the beginning and with the variants, late on vaccines and rapid tests, and made a decision to partner with China for a domestic-made vaccine source. They're covering up a partnership between the Winnipeg lab and the Wuhan lab. This is a government of incompetence and cover-ups at every step. And I think Canadians are happy we're finally emerging several months later than countries that were a little more prepared. But I think anyone running to lead this country has to show a commitment to ensure that we never make the mistakes that were made this last year by the Trudeau government.
Looking more and more like you're going to have an opportunity to test that message on the campaign trail, possibly as early as mid-August. Do you think it would be irresponsible for the Prime Minister to ask a Governor General to dissolve Parliament then, when we are still on the trailing edges of the pandemic? And is your party prepared to run a full leaders campaign across the country if there is an election starting in August?
Well, first, there is no Governor General for the Prime Minister to go to. He also messed up that appointment. We have some of our historic institutions, whether it's the cover-up in the Canadian Armed Forces run by Mr. Trudeau's office and Minister Sajjan, or the fact that we have no Governor General for the Prime Minister to go to dissolve Parliament. Will we be ready? Absolutely. I've been an opposition leader in a minority parliament in a pandemic. We've had to be ready at every step. And that's why in March we launched our Canada Recovery Plan, a 5-point plan to make sure Canada leads in the economic recovery from COVID, that we're not late like we were in the health response to COVID. So the 5-point plan focused on jobs, the mental health, well-being, transparency, securing capacity, and a commitment to get our finances in order. I think that's exactly what the country needs as we're coming out of COVID.
Opérateur, prochaine question. Operator, next question.
Christian Noël, Radio-Canada.
Bonjour, Monsieur O'Toole. Première question, j'aimerais revenir sur la fête du Canada. Vous dites, bon, c'est possible d'être fier du pays et de respecter notre engagement pour la réconciliation en même temps. Ma question à vous est pour les villes qui décident d'annuler leur célébration. Est-ce que c'est une bonne chose ou une mauvaise chose? Est-ce que vous appuyez les villes qui décident d'annuler leur célébration?
C'est une question pour les maires, les mairesses des
non, mais
villes,
je vous la
des
demande
communautés.
à vous, là. Je vous la demande à vous parce que la situation est en cours présentement. Vous voulez être premier ministre du Canada. Est-ce que vous acceptez qu'il y ait certaines villes qui le fassent? Est-ce que vous appuyez leur décision de l'annuler, oui ou non?
J'ai dit il y a une semaine que c'est très important de respecter notre pays, de célébrer notre pays. Je suis fier d'être Canadien et avec une fierté dans ma cœur, je vais redédier mes efforts sur la réconciliation. Et c'est une question pour chaque palier du gouvernement. Qu'est-ce que c'est votre plan pour la réconciliation dans les communautés, dans les provinces et pour le gouvernement fédéral? Il y a 3 semaines, j'ai proposé des appels d'action pour les enfants disparus, les appels 71 à 76. Et pas d'action par le Premier ministre, pas d'action par M. Trudeau après 6 ans. C'est inacceptable. Je vais être un Premier ministre qui va agir pour la réconciliation tout en respectant notre pays et les célébrations pour la fête du Canada.
Au niveau du Sénat, présentement, il y a plusieurs projets de loi qui sont à l'étude, notamment il y a celui sur les thérapies de conversion et celui C10 sur la radiodiffusion. Les sénateurs conservateurs font partie du caucus conservateur. Est-ce que vous leur demandez de faire passer ces 2 projets de loi-là spécifiquement avant la fin de leurs travaux ce soir?
Comme vous le savez, Christian, je m'oppose à la thérapie de conversion. J'ai donné un discours sur ça. Mais les projets de loi dans le Sénat maintenant, c'est là dans le dernier jour de la session du Parlement à cause d'une approche lente par le gouvernement de M. Trudeau. Pas beaucoup d'actions, un budget après 2 ans, pas d'action sur notre économie, sur le niveau de chômage, sur l'inflation, les risques pour notre économie, et une approche lente sur C10 et les autres projets de loi. J'ai eu des inquiétudes avec le projet de loi C10 en ce qui concerne la liberté d'expression, et on va avoir les débats dans le Sénat.
We will take the next question from the floor. Nous allons prendre la prochaine question de la salle.
Good morning, Mr. O'Toole. It's Man Hamidi with the Canadian Press. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and his Liberal ministers have said people should use this Canada Day to reflect on the wrongs done to Indigenous people. You criticize these comments as them sounding like they wanted to cancel Canada Day. How is asking people to reflect on injustices on July 1st is canceling of this day? And also, like several Canadian cities from Fredericton to Victoria have canceled plans for parades and fireworks on Canada Day. Do you think that's wrong?
When you cancel an event that celebrates our country, you lose the opportunity to not only celebrate the great aspects of our country and the opportunity to challenge the citizens of your community, of your province, or the country in general to do better in the future. I think, as I said last week, our country is not perfect, but I'm inspired by our commitment to do better, our commitment to reconciliation. In one of my communities on Canada Day, we had a First Nations chief who would speak about reconciliation. If events don't take place, you can't celebrate and you cannot rededicate your efforts for this country. It's time to build our country up, to address reconciliation, to address inequalities, not by canceling celebrations or tearing Canada down, but recommitting to the principles at the core of this country.
Thank you. Prime Minister Trudeau is also talking today with the Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas. Mr. Garneau, the Foreign Affairs Minister, he's also going to the Middle East this week to visit Jordan, the West Bank, and Israel. What do you think Mr. Trudeau should say to Mr. Abbas, and what do you think? What's in your opinion Mr. Garneau should say to the Palestinian and the Israeli leaders?
Well, I think Mr. Trudeau's position on the Middle East has been muddled and never clear. He says one thing in Parliament, one thing in Canada, and then does another thing at the United Nations. The Conservatives have always been crystal clear. We view Israel as a strong and important ally of Canada. We will continue to partner and try and support this democracy in the Middle East while respecting the process towards a two-state solution. So perhaps there's an opportunity to build capacity within the Palestinian Authority, a commitment to human rights engagement and a disavowal of terrorism and some of the elements that we see with Hamas and other groups in the authority. That's got to be the roadmap, standing by our friend, the democracy of Israel, and trying to support where we can efforts towards a two-state solution. And Mr. Trudeau, I think, should be more clear in his position.
Operator, next question. Opérateur, prochaine question.
Amanda Cannoli, Global News.
Hi there. Good morning, Mr. O'Toole. My question is about your proposal here. You've outlined in your plan how you say that you would, increase partnering with pharmaceutical firms to get them to manufacture at home here critical medicines to avoid situations where we can't produce our own medications in future pandemics. Some of these big firms, though, including Pfizer, have claimed that the Patented Medicines Pricing Review Board is a key barrier to them actually doing that work here. Would you get rid of that or change the way that it's regulating prices? And if not, what other incentive are you proposing here to get these firms to develop more experimental drugs or new drugs here? Would you look at tax breaks?
I have said that the government and Mr. Trudeau's adversarial approach with respect to patented medicines has been one very strong signal he has sent for 5 years that he has no concern about the decline in R&D and decline in innovative medicines in Canada and their development, their testing, and their creation. Our plan today has not only a commitment to the environment, well, that will be encouraged. We will try and partner wherever possible on investments. We did that when we were in government with Medicago, one of the leading Quebec City area pharmaceutical players with a vaccine in development. We will do it by making sure our environment welcomes investment. Mr. Trudeau wouldn't even meet with leading companies in the industry that employ tens of thousands of Canadians in very high-paying jobs. We also know it's a strategic importance for us to have this domestic capacity. So we will recommit to that. And I think 100 years ago, we gave the world insulin. We've been an innovator, but in the last year, we had to rely on other countries, and we fell behind other people because we didn't have domestic ability. We will reestablish that domestic capacity.
So I'd like to get your response specifically there, though, to the question of tax breaks and what that environment would actually look like. But my follow-up is we've seen some countries like Israel that did get early access to vaccines, and they did that in large part by signing deals that included data sharing on the vaccine effectiveness in their population. That has obviously sparked some concerns about privacy, but would you sign a similar deal in a future pandemic if it meant getting early access to medications or vaccines by offering up Canadians' personal data?
Well, the real success Israel had with securing faster vaccine access than Canada was the fact that they had good relations with the pharmaceutical industry, and they had a persistent approach to get in front of what they knew would be a worldwide rush for vaccines. Mr. Trudeau didn't learn about the worldwide rush from PPE and other elements from the first wave, and then he decided to partner with a state-owned Chinese enterprise, CanSino. That led to us losing time and the bad relations that he had with the industry. So we need to work on data protection provisions for Canadians. We talked about that during the NAFTA negotiations, but we have to have the environment where innovative medicines can not only flourish, but be developed and tested in Canada, and the ability to manufacture critical medicines for our own population is centerpiece to our Secure Our Country plan that I announced today.
We will take the next question from the floor. We'll prendre la prochaine question de la salle.
Hi, Mr. O'Toole. Hannah Thibodeau from CBC National News. Hope you're doing well. I'd like to start with the conversion therapy bill that's going through the Senate tonight. Some in your caucus have opposed this. It may stop the bill from passing. What are your thoughts on that, please?
The only reason it's there in the final days, Hannah, is because Mr. Trudeau delayed the implementation of this bill. It was lost with prorogation to cover up the Weiss charity scandal. And then, as Mr. Trudeau knows full well, last fall when I spoke on this bill and I spoke about the harms of conversion therapy, almost our entire caucus voted in favor at second reading and tried to work with the government to make sure that conversations were protected using their very language that the Justice Department was advertising. Mr. Trudeau preferred to try and play politics with this. That's why it's in the dying days of this session. And I will have a commitment that is crystal clear. We will stand up and fight for the rights of all Canadians, including the LGBTQ community. It's why we've been holding him to account for his 5-year broken promise on the discriminatory blood ban against gay men. And Mr. Trudeau will have to answer for whether the bill gets through the Senate or not before he chooses to call an election.
My second question is on a story one of my colleagues did about the Black Entrepreneurship Fund. I hope you've seen the story. Small Business Minister Mary Ng confirmed to CBC News yesterday that the government awarded management of the Black Entrepreneurship Fund an almost $300 million loan program without competition or RFP. Many entrepreneurs who have applied are raising major concerns about the process and how difficult applying has been. What are your thoughts on that, on this process?
First, let me begin by saying we support the intention behind the Black Entrepreneurship Fund. In fact, we think more opportunities for job creation, wealth creation for communities that haven't had access to jobs and opening your own small business is one way to address inequality. So we're committed to that. I've spoken with entrepreneurs and leaders in this very sector, including the leader of the Black North Initiative, and many people were shocked by the lack of engagement, the lack of consultation by the Trudeau government on this initiative. The very fact now that it was sole sourced, apparently to constituents of Mr. Trudeau, why was there not an RFP? Why were leading national groups working with the Black community on entrepreneurship, on opportunity like Black North? Why were they not part of this initiative? So as I said, we support these initiatives, but we want to see action, we want to see transparency, we want to see success. And it seems like everything from the Weiss charity scandal right through to this, it seems that Mr. Trudeau puts insiders or people connected to him first and chooses sole source contracts rather than making sure they get the best program to have the biggest impact.
Opérateur, prochaine question. Operator, next question.
Ian Bailey, Globe and Mail.
Mr. O'Toole, just a quick question. Just curious, how are you going to celebrate Canada Day, given the given the thinking about this issue at this time?
Thank you, Ian. I'll be in my riding in Durham. I talk about how proud I am to be from Bowmanville and Port Perry and to represent my hometowns in Parliament. With the health restrictions still tapering off in Canada, there's a small gathering with seniors that'll be socially distant. I'll be visiting with some people in the riding. The events are very subdued, but as I will do this year, as I have in the past, I will talk about our country, how we need to do better, but also how I think Canada's the best country in the world, and our commitment to it means we need to commit to reconciliation. I've talked about our veterans, including Indigenous veterans in the past, trying to hold up people that were not given the respect they deserved in the past. That's, I think, how we build a great country. We hold up people from our past and celebrate them because they weren't given the credit, like Tommy Prince and other incredible Indigenous veterans. And we recommit to reconciliation and to making sure that dark chapters of our past, like the horrible residential school program, that should fuel our desire to meet the calls to action that have been out for 6 years and provide a roadmap for us.
Follow-up?
No follow-up.
Operator, last question. Opérateur, dernière question.
No more questions on the phone line.
Ceci confirme.
Sure.
Anna va prendre.
Hi, Mr. O'Toole. I'm back. Hannah Thibodeau, CBC National News. I just want to ask you, the last day before the House rose, you gave a stump speech to your caucus. In here, it looks like you're rehearsing for the election campaign, and I have to say it feels much like it. Is this a part of what's happening right now for you, too?
Well, Hannah, I'm an opposition leader that was selected during the COVID pandemic in a minority parliament that had to be ready from the first day I became the opposition leader. There were threats of an election last fall, threats of an election this spring. Now it looks like Mr. Trudeau may call an election in the middle of the summer, hoping that people aren't going to be looking at the economic horizon, not going to be looking at the mental health toll and some of the other challenges we're going to have from the pandemic. So the father in me, the business person in me, the military veteran in me says we have to be ready. We're ready to do a hybrid. We're ready to do what we need to get our message of Canada's recovery plan to Canadians, to tell them we're growing the Conservative Party. All Canadians are welcome in our efforts to get the country back on track, get people back to work in all regions and in all sectors of our country.
Can you talk a bit about that hybrid plan? I know during the leadership race, it was similar for you. Just to explain to Canadians, this studio as well as a part of that hybrid plan. And it's going to be different than traveling all the time across the country, as we've seen in previous campaigns.
Well, we were ready this spring. If Mr. Trudeau's vaccine rollout had not been so slow and cumbersome and delayed, there were rumors that they were looking to go in May and June. So we had to look at what other countries, like President Biden, what did he do to make sure he could connect to people, make sure we could get our message of our 5-point recovery plan out, talk about my vision for Canada. I love this country. I've served it since I graduated high school, and I'm in the process of bringing more people into the Conservative Party. We're going to have the party that reflects the hopes, fears, and aspirations of Canada in 2021 coming out of COVID. And if we have to use the studio or a combination of traditional tour, we're going to respect all provincial and municipal rules with respect to health restrictions. And so we have to always be ready, and Canadians will know whether it's securing vaccine capacity, whether it's getting people back to work. And O'Toole government will make sure Canada is not only ready, make sure we lead the world as opposed to lag it.
This is all the time we have. C'est tout le temps que nous avions. Merci.
Merci. Thank you very much.